The Acro has officially arrived in Ark Survival Ascended, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get your hands on one of these guides. This guide goes over both the taming method that I have found to work for me and also what you can do once you actually tame one of these guys. So make sure you smash the like button if you do find this useful, and consider subscribing if you're new here. It helps out a ton and I really appreciate it. So the first thing you need to know is where to find them. The Acros can be found on the Island, Scorched Earth, Extinction, Lost Colony, Center, Valguero, Ragnarok, and Astrios. I had bad luck getting them to spawn in single player on Astrios. However, the center has crazy spawns, so if you are struggling to find one, head on over to the Volcano Island or the Redwoods on Center. Now, what do you need to tame them? You're going to need to prepare a few things to take on these big stompy beasts. The first thing you're going to need is a taming food. They take exceptional kibble, or you can also give them raw mutton or raw meat. You're also going to need a weapon to do damage. The higher the damage, the better. For this video, I'm using a shotgun. However, you can also use a rifle or something else that does damage to them. It's completely up to you. The third thing that you're going to need is narcotic or biotoxin. I strongly recommend biotoxin as it does so much more torpor and it makes the whole process much faster. You'll understand why I recommend this shortly because you're going to actually see if you tame a high level one, and it's rough if you're not using biotoxin. So like I said, I recommend biotoxin. You can use narcotic, but I do recommend going out and getting yourselves some of that jellyfish slime. Now let's talk about taming them. I spent about 3 hours trying out different taming and trap methods, and honestly what I'm going to show you is the method that worked best for me. There are quite a few different trap builds that I've seen, but unfortunately I kept running into issues where the creature just wouldn't go into defensive stance, or it wouldn't roar, or it just got glitched out on the traps. So like I said, this just worked for me. If you can get the trap to work for you, great. If you choose not to use a trap, great. But for this video, I'm going to be using my method, and it may end up working for you if those other ones are difficult. Now for taming these guys, you have two main options. Like I said, you have either the trap method or the free roaming method. I only recommend the free roaming one if you have good armor, med brews, and a tame to ride on, like a Thyla maybe, or a tanky Thyla that can take some bites from these guys. For my method, you can use either stone or metal dino gates. They do damage stone, however, it doesn't really seem to be at a rate that I think actually will break the gates. They will actually damage them, so you're not going to be able to pick them up unless you fix them. However, if you don't have resources for metal gates, you absolutely can use stone, and unless it just sits there and keeps chopping it, you're never going to break those gates. I used 4 in my testing, but you're going to see me use 5 in this example. The center ones are in a straight line, while the ones on the end are at opposite angles. This allows them to avoid getting stuck, which is what was causing me a ton of problems with the traditional trap method. They can still sometimes get stuck in this method, but you're going to see it much easier for them to get out of and to fix the problem than what I was experiencing with the traditional trap. And if they do get stuck, all you need to do is kind of pull them away from that area. It's much easier with this method, and they usually go straight back into taming without any issues. Again, the purpose of this method is simply to prevent them from getting glitched or stuck in the trap, which prevents them from being able to roar or go into defensive posture, which is basically a waste of time and your energy and your sanity. Now, once you find an acro that you want to tame and you set up the gates, you're going to start shooting it. Once it hits around 75% HP, it's going to go into the defensive stance. It is important to shoot it at least once or twice more, depending on the strength of your weapon, once it goes into that stance. The acro will eventually roar like this, and that is when you can approach it and feed it your narcotic or biotoxin from the last slot of your hotbar. The higher the level the acro, the more it's going to take and the more you're going to have to do this. If you happen to miss the roar because you're too far away or something happens, you'll have to feed it wild creatures until it is fully healed, and then you can begin again. The good news is these guys don't lose torpor that much, so if you get killed by it or if it runs off and starts fighting things, the torpor drain isn't too bad. Like, it does go down, but it's not terribly crazy. Now, if it roars and you do successfully feed it, back away and shoot it again. Your goal is to keep it in the defensive stance, or you're going to basically have to let it reset and heal again. So as soon as it finishes doing its little animation, you want to shoot it again to keep it in that defensive stance. Every time you feed it, it is going to regain its health. And there's another move that it does that I'm going to talk about in just a second that also allows it to regain its HP. So just keep an eye on making sure that it doesn't get too bloody. If it doesn't go into the defensive stance and it's getting bloody, you're gonna have to feed it a wild creature in order for it to fully heal and then start again. Now, occasionally the acro has a different roar from the feeding roar. I've specifically kind of noticed that there's 2 different roars that it does, and one of them is this low, rumbly, fake one. Do not approach the acro when it does that. It's fake. It's a lie. It's a scam. Don't do it. When it does that roar, it actually heals itself is one of the things that I've noticed. It kind of becomes immune to damage while it's doing that roar, but then if it was damaged before, it will heal. The second kind of roar that I've seen it do besides the feeding one is one that usually happens after the low rumbly one. It almost does like this big roar into the sky and it lifts its head. And it does kind of like this crazy AoE effect, which can actually send your character flying. So try to avoid it if you can, but just make sure that you've got med brews or food on you to help you heal in case you do take damage. Furthermore, if you see it glowing kind of like a reddish color, I think this is something like an adrenaline mode, and you can't tame it while it's like that, so you're gonna have to let it chill out. It kind of gets a little bit fast, it gets really aggressive, and there's really not much you can do until it chills out. So if you continue this method of basically shooting it into its defensive stance, running up when it roars, and feeding it the biotoxin, eventually your acro will fall asleep. Once it's fallen asleep, you can throw your kibble or your taming food inside of it and let it tame up. Once your big angry acro has been tamed, you can saddle it up at level 77 with a smithy craft. The acro has some pretty unique abilities. It has a normal melee bite attack, and on PC this is left click. Right click is this really cool stomp attack that does some pretty crazy damage. And pressing C allows you to switch between regular and defensive stance. Defensive stance basically reduces the amount of damage that you take, and I think it's around 40% or so. As you can see here, it takes reduced damage from this Rex. And you can use something called adrenaline mode by hitting spacebar. You'll notice a bar pop up at the bottom of your screen, and as you take damage, that bar will fill up, and then you can activate it and basically go out and cause mischief and mayhem. And the coolest part about this is you can just run through rocks. All right, there you have it. That is the acro in Ark Survival Ascended. I hope you found this guide very useful. It definitely took me quite a while to get my own taming method going that worked for me, regardless of whether you use my method or you freestyle it or you use a trap. Let me know in the comments what you think about this big stompy beast. And of course, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.